Let's dig into the process of how we improve our posture. So far, we've looked at this idea of mentally placing a handle on a bone or bony structure in order to help us understand how we want to move that bone. At first, we really just need to get some movement going. Most of us are not that familiar with specifically moving our pelvis or rib cage, so many of us will struggle just to move these bones at first. But ultimately, our goal is to move towards the correct configuration and to stay there. That's not to say that we want to be stuck and static in one specific posture all the time, but we do want to avoid consistently falling into the wrong configuration and staying there all the time, which is where most people are going to be starting from. To take control over our posture, we need a mental model of what we want to achieve. A model is more or less a picture or conception of what we're aiming for. We're going to examine this today by looking at the arms. It's much easier for us to manipulate our arms in comparison to our torso, because we intentionally manipulate our arms all the time, which is not as true with the torso. If you sit in a chair with your arms hanging at your sides, and you take a picture of yourself from the side, there's something you're likely going to see. Before continuing, I recommend you do this. It's easy to do with a webcam if you have one. You could also check in a mirror. So do that before continuing if you'd like. What you likely saw, and I've seen this in basically every student I've ever had in their first lesson, is that your elbow points backwards and your thumb points forwards. According to the model of good posture that I support, that is wrong. It's not that your elbow should never point backwards, but that should not be your baseline, and you should be able to point it outwards. Now, most people can point their elbow out if they want to. You just have to ask them to do it. However, many people will turn their hand massively and start to point their thumb backwards to get their elbow to point out, which we don't want. But still, if you tell them to instead point their thumb in, they usually can. Already, you can hopefully see that by having a specific idea of what you want to do with a bone or bony structure, you can, through movements, intentionally change how that bony structure relates to the other parts of your body. Now let's get to the challenging part. We'll place our next handle on what we call the tip of the elbow, which is the furthest bony tip on the elbow. That is what we're taking from pointing back to pointing out. Can you also bring the tip of your elbow forward so that it's in line with the front of your rib cage when seen from the side? Most people have their elbow pointed back, so it will have to go forward and out. Again, try doing this before continuing. Record yourself with video through a webcam or with a camera if you can. What most people do when I ask them to do this is they send their hand forward, which does allow them to get their elbow to be in line with their ribs, but their arm is clearly angled in an unsustainable way. So what if I said you have to keep your wrist under your elbow so that they're vertically aligned? Is that possible while still getting your elbow in line with the front of your rib cage? Many people will seriously struggle with this. I certainly did when I first tried it. Some might even think it's impossible at first. This is because, in order to get your arm to hang vertically with the elbow pointed out and the elbow in line with the ribs, you have to significantly extend your arm. You have to have length in the musculature and fascia of your upper arm and upper back. Doing this will feel uncomfortable or like a large stretch to most people. However, this should be well within your range of motion. Even if you disagree with me saying that the baseline for the arm should be that it hangs vertically with gravity like this, you must agree that this should be in your range of motion. All this is extending your arm. Yet most people can't do this at first, or if they can, it's uncomfortable for them. Think about that. This movement that should be totally normal is not a realistic option for most people. They would never do this on their own because it would feel strange, and people don't like strange feelings. And so their upper arm and upper back area never gets lengthened. It's always kept shortened. That's very similar to what we see in the torso. We looked at the movements that lengthen the torso, and they're also a bit uncomfortable to perform. So even though they should be well within your range of motion, most people will never make those movements. They will stay shortened all the time. So what are the main tools we're using to make a change in our posture? We have the model that tells us where we want to get. In the case of the arms, we want the elbow to point out, the thumb to point in, the elbow to be in line with the front of the ribs, and, adding one more idea here, we want to keep the elbow low. We don't want to raise the elbow here at all. You will likely have to pull the handle at your elbow down to prevent it from wanting to come up here. We also have the directions of movement, which are how we tell ourselves the movements we want to make to get towards the model. For instance, we see the elbow pointed back, so we need to rotate it to point it outward to satisfy the criteria of our model. And we have a camera or mirror that can get us visual feedback to verify that we have moved as we intended. If you play with this procedure, you might notice that you keep wanting to pull your thumb way back in order to get your elbow to point out, even though that's wrong. You likely won't feel that, but you can see it on video or in the mirror. We have a few pieces so far. We've looked at the pelvis, the rib cage, and now the arms. Is it clear that in all these adjustments we make to improve our posture, we are conceiving of the correct configuration and moving towards it by changing the relative position of the bones? We're moving towards a configuration that should be within our range of motion, but which you may find is not in your current range of motion. Now, you will not make a permanent change in a day. You didn't get to where you are now in a day either. But the directions and conceptions that we're looking at here, if you work on them a bit and apply them in your day-to-day life, will allow you to change how you use your body. If you do that consistently, you will change your posture, because your posture is the result of the movements that you make. The tissues do get used to what you've done, and they become a hurdle to get over. But ultimately, it all comes back to this: having the conception of where you want to go, making the movements, and verifying the change through a video or other visual feedback like a mirror. The next episode in this series will be the last. We'll finish off how to use tools to work on your posture, and hopefully get you in a good place to start changing your posture for the better.